Okay, everyone, welcome back to another exciting week of the Book Boat. I'm one of your hosts, Jocelyn, and my other co-host.
I'm Alejandra. Welcome back, everybody.
I know we're so excited to be back. By the time that you were listening to this episode, we have just released our first episode last week, and it's almost kind of like riding this like awesomeness high, I want to say, and I feel bad saying it in that way, but it was really awesome to get some of the feedback that we've been hearing from people and some of the even like recommendations of like what we should be doing and what we should be including. And we kind of got a little shout out from our alma mater, SJSU. They definitely like posted us, and it was a very like just heartwarming moment last week.
It really was. It definitely made things a lot more real, I think, because we up to this point we had just been recording episodes and kind of saving them.
Yep.
So now we finally shared them, and it definitely made things really real. I want to thank everybody who shared the podcast, who listened to the podcast. So many of our classmates and friends have been posting it on their Instagrams, and really like the only way I think other people might find it is if you guys or listeners are sharing it. So it really means a lot to have you guys just listen, and then to have them share is just like, I was beyond thankful.
Yeah, so many people were talking about us, and I know that. So I kind of was the person that kept my secret under wraps because
I
I wanted
didn't.
to
I was
really,
so bad.
and there's nothing wrong with that. I just wanted to like get things going, and I wanted to have like this like secret project myself about like, and just something that I was very passionate about. And so I remember like I reposted a picture of someone reposting our podcast, and so many people were like, wait, you have a podcast? And I was like, yes, it's a secret project, it's out. And it was just kind of like this very like awesome moment that people were like, you've been doing this is so cool. And like my sister, who is she's a mother of two, and so she's like trying to navigate all of these conversations and all this stuff, and she followed us, and she was just like, this is awesome, like I definitely am going to be looking at some of these book recommendations. And it makes me just very happy that people were super supportive of it.
Yeah, like you said, like it's amazing to see the support. And since you mentioned that, my brother and my nephew were actually listening to it as well.
Yeah.
And it was kind of funny because I could tell, like, as they were listening to it, like what part they were listening to, because I'd get texts. But according to my nephew, who's oh man, this is bad, I can't remember his age, I'm sorry, Isaiah. He's gonna be in the 3rd grade, I believe. But according to him, our video was very professional, so thank you, shout out to him. But yeah, again, I can't say anything besides thank you to everybody. And please, if you are still listening, to keep reposting, keep sharing. That's really the only way I think that we're gonna grow and get our message out there.
Yeah, because it's honestly like this whole podcast was started for this purpose of just trying to make like trying to show the world how useful children's literature is, and just how we have seen it, and how just the value that it has in just being this tool that teachers can use, parents can use, anybody can literally use to have conversations. Honestly, like I think if I worked in the business world, I don't know if this would exactly fly. I would bring one of these books in and be like, you want to know something? Like, why is it that children's books can like have these conversations about race, but here in our workplace, like we're not?
Yeah.
Like we should be able to, like I would do that, but I don't think that would go over well. Hence why I'm not in the business world. But
no, yeah, like you're saying, these books are such important tools. And I think obviously because we're teachers, like that's who kind of our immediate like, I guess, target audience is. But really it's anybody who has children, who knows children, anybody who wants to spread diverse literature, I think is somebody who should listen.
yes.
But speaking of things that we were reposting, the book boat, Jocelyn reposted, I think it was like an anchor chart that had these 3 questions, and I was like, oh man, why didn't I think of this before? And the questions were, who writes the stories, who benefits from the stories, and who is missing from the stories? And I think these are like 3 really powerful questions that moving forward, we've kind of decided when we share the books, we kind of want to answer these questions in a way, just because I think they're super powerful. And I if you want a good book, I think you should be able to answer these questions, and you kind of know a little bit about the book just from these 3 questions alone.
Yeah. So with that being said, that's kind of going to be our motto going on from now on, about when we bring these books to you and we talk about them, we ourselves are going to be asking that questions, like, who's writing the story? Obviously, if we're bringing in books about Hispanic culture or about characters who are part of the LGBTQ community, we want to make sure the people that are writing it are part of the community, or that somebody had some say in the book, because then I feel like when you're part of it, you kind of have a sense of like how to positively portray those communities without the negative stereotypes that go with them. So we're asking ourselves those questions: who's benefiting from this, and who's missing from it? Because sometimes we may pick a book and we realize, you know what, like there may be a perspective that's missing on it, and that's okay, as long as we're aware of those biases that may be in the books. We can, I guess, I don't even know what to say to that, but like, you know what I mean?
I feel like it
like
adds more to the
going out there.
No, it adds more to the conversation for sure. And like I've seen books where I think they're good, but I think, you know, there's still something missing. Like I think my big example is like books that have animals in it as the main characters. It's like, cool, that's great and all, but you know, I'd love for my students to see themselves, not to see, I don't know, like an owl, you know? Which, don't get me wrong, I love the animal books. Like, those are very cute. But I think there comes a time and a place where you kind of need the characters to be authentic and to be people. But, yeah, I think that's, like, a big update. And I think we were also mentioning, which I forgot to tell, so before we record, we also kind of have a little debrief before. But we mentioned this. I mentioned it where, like, we kind of want to come up with like an ending question or something that we want to post like on our Instagram, just to make sure we're keeping the conversation going, because sometimes podcasts can seem like one-sided because you're just listening to us talk. But I would definitely love to hear our listeners and see what they have to say. So I think it'd be nice to kind of end each episode with a question, and then we'll post it on our Instagram, and then you can reply there, or even on our Facebook.
Yeah, I think I have a really good question for tonight's episode.
Okay, good, because we didn't talk about it, so I was like, I hope you have one, because I don't have one.
I have one. Light bulb just clicked inside my head.
Don't forget. But some housekeeping before. Super exciting. Jocelyn's first day is tomorrow. Of course, when you're listening to this, she's already gonna be a few weeks in. But how exciting! How are you feeling?
I am feeling. I'm trying to like describe this all in like a few words, and it's honestly chaotic, bittersweet moments. It's chaotic because it's a day by day of like all these COVID restrictions that are changing, and so it's like before we were allowed on campus and we could teach from there, but now we have to check in, and now it's like, so it's becoming like this like chaotic process, because like once you get a handle of one situation, then something else happens. And like right now, currently, like the state hasn't outlined all these, like what is considered participation, and we somehow have to keep track of participation. So it's like chaotic in that sense. And it's also bittersweet because, one, this is not how I imagined.
Definitely not.
Not how I imagined my first year of teaching. It's sad because it's like I'm going into my classroom to kind of teach from it, to make me feel like I'm really at work. And to be honest, like it's really sad because it's like I put up a bulletin board and I'm like, is that all I get to do? Because do I decorate my classroom and then we not go back to school and I did it all for no purpose, like, or for no reason? Like, what is going on? So it's kind of bittersweet in that moment. But I think I have found like really creative ways to express myself and express like making the kids like feel happy that they're in a classroom. Like on my Google Slides or my presentations, we do like virtual Bitmoji classrooms, which have been like really fun. And I just learned how to like remove the backgrounds from pictures. So I've been adding more things, and I've been incorporating my classroom theme into our virtual classroom as well. So it's bittersweet. But I can go on a tangent about that for an hour.
But it's just really exciting, and I'm excited for you, and I can't wait to hear about it the next time we get to talk.
Yes. So we might as well get moving along, because this is going to be a topic that is
and very I've been nervous.
Okay, yes, we're very nervous to talk about it because we want to do this topic justice. And especially with everything that's going on right now, it is a topic that should be, that we believe, first of all, we should say we believe, should be talked about in a classroom for many reasons. And the best way to say it is we did our research on this, and there is a lot of research that says that students are here, like, are capable of talking about this in the classroom. And I think that a lot of teachers and parents almost like, oh, my child's too young for that. And as we talk about these books, you're going to get the first glimpse, in-depth glimpse of our research project. So that will be very interesting. So I don't want to like get talking about that, but anyways, this is a very, very dear and near to our heart topic, and it's kind of what got us started on this master's project. And so the first topic that we're going to talk about is race and how to approach that in a classroom, because it's like I said, it's something that we believe should be talked about. Mm-hmm. And we found the best way to do it is to use children's literature as a tool. So I'll let Alejandra take it away for our first book.
Yeah, so this was our first topic, and again, we mentioned this in our first episode. We had like kind of different themes, and this was the first theme or topic, and each one had 3 books, and today we're going to talk about 2 of those books. And I think just going in, like, I want to say that I don't know everything about this. Like, yes, we've definitely done research. I think being part of just being a teacher, I think I've learned that as I'm going, I'm learning still. So I'm always kind of open to learning and hearing different thoughts and things like that. So no way am I saying like this is the one and only. So I definitely want to hear from our listeners what you guys think. But when we first started the week, I guess, let me backtrack a little bit. So when we presented each theme, we did like a KW chart, so a know and a want to know with our students. We told them the theme or the topic, and they kind of gave us some information. So we started off with race, and of course we got like the answers of, you know, there's people of different colors, there's people from different cultures, things like that. And remember, we were in a kindergarten, 3rd grade, and 6th grade classroom, so we kind of were not struggling, but we wanted to make sure we found books that were, I don't want to say appropriate, because I don't know if that's the right word, but we wanted to find books that we could kind of use in all of the classes. And the first one, I was really excited because I'd been wanting to look at it and read it, and I want to say it might have been Sarah who introduced this book, but it's called Not Quite Snow White. And I'm going to show it in our video in case you guys are watching our video as well. And it's written by Ashley Franklin. So for one of our questions is who writes the story. So I looked up a little bit about Ashley Franklin, and she is an African-American Muslim writer. She's a mom, she's a college professor, and she currently lives in Arkansas with her husband and her 2 sons. And I think we picked this book, or I mean, I don't know if I should I'll give a quick summary about it. So it's about a little girl. Her name's Tamika. And she's super excited because they're going to do a school play on Snow White. And she is just somebody who like is super into dancing and acting. And she just got all this energy. So of course she wants to try out for the role of Snow White. But as we're going along, some of the other students don't think that her, I guess, physical appearance is the right fit to be Snow White. And since it is a podcast, I guess I'll give a little description. So she is, Tamika's, I don't know what grade they're in, but they're definitely in elementary age. She has brown skin, dark black hair. I think she's adorable. But the kids in our school don't think that she fits the profile of being Snow White. And I'm just going to read a little bit of one of the pages where I got the most reaction from my students, and I had 6th graders. So it said, after the audition, Tamika heard some of the other kids whispering, "She can't be Snow White. She's too tall. She's much too chubby. And she's too brown." So as soon as I finished reading that one, I could just hear the gasp of my students. And of course, they're kind of gasping at the fact that these kids just said that because she's too brown, she's too chubby, and she's too tall, she can't be this character of Snow White, who is a cartoon, who, I mean, do we really know what she looks like? This was just somebody who made this character up, you know? Um,
Yeah. And a moment with that, like, sorry to interrupt,
no,
but
go
like a
ahead.
moment with that, when I read that book to my third graders, like exactly the same thing, like the gasp of
Yeah.
because they couldn't believe that someone would actually say that. And then the next thing I heard, I didn't even like turn the page, and so one of my students says, "That's racist."
Yeah.
And I think that is very important because at third grade, a child already knew what that meant. So anyways,
Yeah.
continue. I think that's a very important key point that I'm
And,
gonna like hit on a little bit later. But
no, of
yes.
course. And the fact that both of our students gasped at that
Mm-hmm.
same like spot, and people are trying to say that students aren't aware of these
Mm-hmm.
things is kind of mind blowing to me. So anyways, I don't want to give away the story, but you know, this obviously upsets her. She's super sad. She doesn't really want to audition anymore. And this confidence that she had at the beginning of the story, you can just see it like goes away. And of course, her parents are there. They try to cheer her up. But I love this story because it was just about this little girl. Like they, you know, it wasn't anything special. This could be any one of our students who wants to try out for this role. And I think that's something that I've noticed that I really like about. It's a theme that I've noticed that I like in books where it's just like this ordinary kid kind of stepping up to play this major part, which was very similar to and my favorite, it's about Kamala and Maya's Big Idea, where it's just these two little girls and they get this idea and they go for it. And same thing with Not Quite Snow White. Tamika wants to play the role of Snow White and she doesn't see anything wrong with it until some of her peers kind of put her down for it. And I think that's a really important message to tell our students. I don't know if you want to share any other thoughts from Not Quite Snow White or.
No. Just my other thoughts was that was a very good introduction book. Our other group member that's not on the podcast, Sarah, she used that with her kindergarten students.
Mm-hmm.
And she said that she felt a little bit more like when she was for the master's project, she felt like she was almost kind of guiding the questioning that was going on.
Yeah.
And even her kindergarteners knew that that was not right what was said.
Yeah.
And how old are kindergartens? Like fifth or 6 year olds? Like,
Yeah.
and they're already aware of what's going on. And again, this point that I'm going to hit on this entire time, and this like major theme of our podcast is children are aware of what's going on.
Yeah.
So the fact that parents and teachers sometimes try to shy away, and granted there are other things, there's the district pushback, parent pushback. Some parents are just unsure of how to navigate these conversations. Just to tie it all back, children are aware. So do you want them to get the right information or do you want them to be misinformed?
And I think also just having a space where they feel safe.
Yes.
Like for example, this book didn't flat out say like, oh, these kids are racist. Like that came from the students. And I think that's something that I liked about the book is the fact that it wasn't like it's telling them like, you know, she can't do it because of this, this, and that. Like the kids kind of were seeing what was going on and just from their own personal experience, they put two and two together.
Yep.
So then to answer kind of one of the questions is like who benefits from this story? And I think it's just obviously it's going to be the story's about a little girl who is I'm going to go ahead and assume she's Black. She has brown skin. She has these beautiful dark hair. And I think just having like seeing themselves in this book and seeing her be able to play this lead in a play when people might not think she's capable of it, but she feels like she can. She's got all this spunk and she tries out for it. I think having little girls see that, it's going to make them think that they can do it too. And I think by making this normal, it's going to impact all students. Like they're going to see this girl can do it. Okay, so it is normal, you know, and it should be normal.
Yes. And then, so part of our research project is that we had to include, like afterwards we did quick writes. So which each of the books we had prompts. And I guess our quick write was, how does race affect you?
Yeah.
Right? I think that's how it was. And it was very shocking because for me, and I mean, I shouldn't be shocked, But to hear some of the responses, okay, so first of all, like the quiet students who never talked in class had the most to say.
I
Remember
noticed that too.
yeah,
Yeah.
and they had so much, like one of my students like was 100% aware of what race was and how it affected her. And she had mentioned about like how she was not, I don't want to like talk about my student, so I'm just gonna
Mhm.
like kind of give like a general statement, but she was not of the dominant culture. And
Mhm.
so she said that she had experienced racism before, and then one of my other students said the same thing.
Yeah.
And he said that he was being made fun of for some of his facial features. And so it was those moments that I was like, wow, like your third grader is experiencing racism. And I
Mhm.
really wanted to like tell parents and like tell all the other teachers and be like, look at what's going on here.
Yeah.
But it's like, obviously, okay, if there was bullying, I did address that. I should probably like backtrack. They were just saying it had happened in the past.
Yeah.
And I made sure to check in with those students too, just to make sure it still wasn't happening.
Mhm.
But I wish that I could have shown everything and been like, look at what these students are saying.
Mhm.
Like, but I didn't also want them to put him in like this weird position and like
Yeah.
yeah. And so it was just it was very, and plus you can't say any of that. It was a research project. It was supposed to stay confidential. So yeah, but it was very just interesting. It's still shocking for me some of the things that I was
Yeah,
reading.
and I had very similar experiences as well, where even like I had students share their experiences as well, and I think I definitely recommend keeping a journal to like have reading responses or things
Mhm.
like that where students can kind of reflect and write. They don't like it at first, but they're gonna get used to it. And
Yep.
I felt like, especially for the kids who are kind of more quiet and more shy, I think it's a good way to have them share without putting them on the spotlight. But
Yep.
I definitely love this book. I think it was a good introduction, and I think the pictures are beautiful. I didn't really get to talk about it as much today, but I love, they almost look kind of cartoon like in a way, like they're just like they're beautifully drawn, and I love them. And I love like you get to see Tamika in these different characters, this dinosaur, vegetable, a cowgirl. So it's
Mhm.
the pictures are beautiful, and I think it almost makes it come off very kid friendly,
Mhm.
because I know, and I even filming this, like I was a little apprehensive because I don't want to say the wrong thing, and I think that's why sometimes people can get scared because they don't want to say the wrong thing. But I think we owe it to our students to talk
Mhm.
about it, even if it could be uncomfortable.
Yep.
um and before we started, I kind of was like, I'm not really sure who's missing from this story. I think the story did a really good job of um making this character who might not normally be like a lead character into a wonderful lead character, and I don't want to take away from that. So I don't necessarily think there's something hugely missing. I think if one of our listeners thinks something's missing, I'm definitely open to hearing about it.
Yep.
But I loved this story, and I think Ashley Franklin did a really great job.
Yep. I agree with you. So awesome book. I love Not Quite Snow White, and it's definitely a book that I have scanned onto a PDF and put on my virtual library. Even though I'm teaching sixth grade, I think
Yeah.
it's still valuable to have. So then this moves us along to the second book of
Yes.
our master's project, which is called Let's Talk About Race.
Mm-hmm.
And this is actually one that I just planned a lesson around last week. So you'll be hearing about that, about how I'm planning on teaching this. But first of all, answering those three questions: who writes the story? So Julius Lester wrote the story, and he was actually a civil rights activist. And he wrote a couple books. And what really made him famous was what really like his writing career began was in 1967 when a publisher read his essay, The Angry Children of Malcolm X, and
Mm.
it offered him a contract to develop it into a book. The book titled Look Out, Whitey, Black Power is Gonna Get Your Mama was published in 1968. And this was the first book to explain the term Black Power and place it in the context of African American history. So Julius Lester was like, who writes the story? Like, he's writing about race, and he's in it. Like, he was a civil rights activist. Like, awesome book to
Mm.
kind of even have your students read and like learn about him. Because I know we all learn about Martin Luther King and how amazing he was, but it's always good to like bring in other activists into our curriculum. So who benefits from the story? I'm just going to start off. I think everyone benefits from the
Yeah.
story, and I'm going to explain that right now as I go through it. And who's missing from this story? I really don't think anybody's missing. And I will explain it all as we go through it too. So let's get started with this book. Let's talk about race. First of all, love it. On the very first page, it says, I am a story. So I don't know if you can see it, but it's like, I am a story and so are you. So is everyone. First of all, I find that to be a very powerful statement. And this book, I'm just going to go into detail because I love it.
Go ahead.
This
Yeah.
book, I know, sorry, I'm going to get carried away. So I think that is a very powerful statement of I am a story, because he's tying this identity of race being part of your story, how it is who we are. And it's not just about how we look, it's about what we love, who our family is, what our culture is, what we love to eat. And like, he talks about how this idea of story, like, many people and many events are part of my story and yours too. And then he goes on and he talks about his favorite things. So he's the narrator behind this. And he talks about how like part of his story is he likes to do crossword puzzles, take photographs, and cook. Like, it's all of that. And he says like one big part that's part of his story is that he's Black. And he says, it's part of the way he phrases it is, oh, there's something else that is part of my story. It's part of yours too. That's what race we are. And then he says, I'm Black. What's your race? And so then he goes on and says how these are, it's beautiful to have how our race tells a story. But then he like explicitly says it here, which is, I think, this is a brilliant book to bring up about talking about race. And he says, that there's just some, so he talks about how when we tend to compare races, like what tends to be is sometimes people say my race is better than your race. And I think that is a very powerful statement, because he blatantly just says that out for people. And like, I remember reading this to my students and being like, because it was one of those other moments of like, wow, that's racist to say that. Yeah. So he talks about how it makes people feel bad about the race that they are, because one's saying that they're better than the other. And he's saying it's not like we're not better than the other. And then he kind of brings it into this like moment of like looking beneath the skin color. Like he has like close your eyes, like touch your face, like see that we all have beating hearts, and what we all have like that we all have eyes and ears and all this stuff. And it just like brings it down to like deep down, we're all the same. Like we're all the same. And it's when we start looking at our races in the sense of like mine's better than yours, is that like there's issues that start happening. And so it's a beautiful book. And he's like telling us to look beneath our skin. And then he says, when you pay attention to people's stories, like who they are, what makes them unique, you learn more about who they are, like what they like, where they're born, what they don't like. And it's like, and then he goes talking like, and then it kind of ends like this really funny moment. It's like, I bet you didn't know that I actually have asthma. And so it like brings it back to this really funny moment about how like your race is a very important part of who you are, and you should not forget that. And it's not just about that. It's like about what makes us unique as well, and that we should be empowering that in ourselves. So great book, first of all, to just even get the conversation started about what is race, how it all revolves, how it intersects between all these different like aspects of our lives. And then with this book, I've actually like went ahead and did a lesson plan, because I really wanted my students, and I went ahead and did like, what is your story? Yeah. So I am incorporating it with I am poems. I know that people have seen like, yeah, I've heard of those, like, oh, what's an I am poem? So you basically write like, I am this, I am that. And so I'm planning on reading this to my students, and I also like upload it and put it on a PDF so they can access it from their computers. And then we're gonna write I am poems, like I am a dog lover. I like mine, like what that I wrote is, I come from a family of like 3 other sisters, and I was born in another country. And then I try to get really creative with it, and it says I come from a family filled with the best enchiladas, and like try to put a little bit of try to be creative. I'm not I'm not creative at writing poems, so that was the best I can do. But it was just very interesting because as I was writing my I Am poem, I can envision like my sixth graders really taking this off and embracing their race and embracing who they are and just really making some creative I Am poems to the point where I'm probably going to share them with the rest of my school. But
I want to hear it.
Yeah, so it's a very good book because everyone benefits from it. It's being written by someone who is from that community, and he died in 2018. So he died recently, and so it's just great that we stumbled upon this book. And I think the way we stumbled upon it, honestly, was for when we were looking up books to buy for our research project. This was like one of the top recommended books on Amazon. And I remember like, I feel like it was either Sarah or I don't know if it was myself, but I felt like we were like hesitant to buy it.
Yeah.
And then we ended up buying it and we all loved it. My students loved it because they were able to like see more of an empowerment about who they are and what's their story. And I remember reading it to it, and the responses that we got back from this one was was awesome. Like this was one where my students were like, I am Chinese and I'm proud of like where my family came from because they just migrated here like a couple years ago. So it was awesome to hear those types of stories too.
Yeah. And as we were reading it, I mean, I don't want to like, I feel so bad. I don't want to say I feel bad because like I know how much you love this book, and I definitely like this book, and I think it's a good, like, I feel like the book that I mentioned was a very good like introduction one, and I feel like this one's almost kind of stepping it up just a little bit, where it's definitely like he asks you these questions in the book. And I think it caught my sixth graders and almost me a little off guard, where it's just I don't know, like it's really making you think about things. And there's like two things that I like love. I mean, there's two things that kind of stand out for me, where one of them where I was kind of confused, where he's kind of talking about beneath the skin, which I definitely think is important. And I don't even know how to say this without, I don't want to sound like, I just think right now we're in such like a tough time where like my issue with books, for example, that are like, if all the characters are purple, like I get the idea of like we're all kind of the same, and like obviously we are underneath it, like we're all bones, we're all skin, but I think sometimes our race plays such a big part in our story and how we can even like move forward, and how some races can definitely be perceived in a negative light while others are kind of more favored. So I feel like I kind of had this inner debate as you were kind of talking about it, where it's like, it's hard because it's like right now it's like such an important part where we have to acknowledge that some races have been put down for so many years.
Yes.
But I liked it because it tied it back together with like your story, and like because of your race, you have these things that build who you are, like from food to like music that you listen to. So I think it does a good job of like putting it all together, and I think that's why I really liked the book. And I think if it had just talked about like what's underneath the skin, I think I would have had a bigger issue with it. But the fact that he's kind of talking about this, like your story and your identity, I think it brought it back for me.
Yeah, no, exactly. Well said. I agree with all of that about how he does talk about it, because if you just like, oh, just look underneath, it's like it's almost like that, like saying it's like, oh, when people don't, oh, I don't see color. No, you should be seeing color. You should be recognizing where we come from and what makes us unique. And so I think he does a very good job of being like, yes, we are all the same underneath, but at the same time, like my race is a big part of my story, and it makes me who we are, and it leads to like what I like, what influences me. So
yeah, exactly. I think you stated it better than I did. But exactly. I think that's a big part of what we're trying to get across is like, yeah, we might be the same underneath, but these our skin really plays a big role in a lot of things. But
so that was the second book we used about race. The third book, which we were going to include, but we kind of almost want to do this one on its own episode, or we are going to do this one on its own episode because one, it is very relevant. I know that I just said that about all these books so that they're very relevant to what's going on now, but this one is, and Alejandra has it. Yeah. It's called Something Happened in Our Town. And just a little synopsis, there is a police shooting and a police shot a Black kid. And it's how these characters all interact with that story. And so we figured that to do that book justice, the justice that it really does deserve, and how we would teach this and bring this up, because it could be very heavy to bring into a classroom, but it's a reality that children are seeing in the news, they're hearing about it on social media, everything, and does exist. And so we wanted to make that book its own separate podcast where we could really dive into it and talk about it, and then maybe include another book that was almost similar to that. I love the book. I think the book was very informational, and like I think Alejandra mentioned it before, there was an entire like 5 pages of like definitions, kid-friendly definitions you could be using and all that. But we will leave that for another day.
Yeah, and it won't be our next episode because we kind of want to, I don't want to say take a break, but put a little pause on it and then go back to another topic that we really like, which our next episode we're going to talk about. I think we're going to title it, I don't know, I saw it in our PowerPoint, but it's called The Power of Names. Yes. And I'll kind of leave it at that a little bit. I'm just really excited. And we're going to give a little bit more. I think we should share our stories about our names in those episodes as well.
Oh God, people are going to find out my first name.
I was going to say, I have to talk to you about that too, but maybe this will be a good cliffhanger for next episode, but you'll definitely want to tune in for that one.
Yeah. So yeah, we are, so just a little synopsis is we're going to talk about the power of names and how the names that we're given and represent so much of our culture and who our parents are and everything. And so we just wanted to have like a really good episode where we have books that kind of encourage some students to embrace their names, because I know that students come into classrooms with names that aren't your stereotypical Brittany's. No offense against any of these names I'm mentioning, by the way. So like your Brittany's or your Rebecca's or anything of that. And so they come with names that like that come from their culture. And so I think it's one that if you're gonna find out my name, and I swear mine does not go with my culture, but it has a lot to do with who I am. And I think there is a power, and I think that kids should be embracing and correcting people and be like, no, my name is this. Like, come on, pronounce it right. And I think I saw this. Sorry, I'm like taking this very far. But I saw, relating to our episode, I saw this meme. It's like, if you can get the names of characters from Games of Thrones, you can get a child's name correct.
Yeah, I saw that too.
You can get your Daenerys and your Tyrion and your Lannister names. I haven't watched Game of Thrones in a while. But if you can get any of those names, you can get a child's name right. Yeah. Let's just get that through. So that's going to be our whole synopsis of the next episode.
Which I'm excited. But okay, hopefully you didn't forget. I said we're going to leave off with a question. Do you know what the question is, Jocelyn?
Yes. My question for everyone out there is, how do you plan on talking about race in your classrooms? Oh. I really want to see how people are approaching it, especially with everything that's going on with like the Black Lives Matter movement. And everything. Like, I want to know how you're going to approach this, because if you don't talk about it, your kids are going to be talking about it, whether we're not going to lunch anymore, but they're probably on some like game talking about it, or they're hearing their parents talk about it. And so it's like, I think it should, like I said, we believe it should be addressed in a classroom. I'm not trying to put my beliefs on anybody else. That's I say we believe. We believe it should be a topic that should be included in the classroom, because it has a lot to do with the student's identity, their story. And so if you don't give students that space for that critical dialogue and to really dive into that, then I feel like it's almost like taking their student, oh my God, what is it called? I can't think of the word. Oh, that like autonomy in their classroom. Like, oh, hey, I'm like deeply affected by what's going on and what I keep hearing in the news, like media and everything. I want to have the power, and I want to talk about it, and I want to get my opinions out there, and I want to formulate my opinions and know fact from fiction and everything. So I think giving children that space to talk about a topic such as race is very important.
Yeah, and now that you mention that, it's like giving them the tools. Like I think our hope is not to persuade students in one way or the other, but just to like give information. Like they can make up their mind, left or right, but it's just giving them the tools and giving them the space to have these conversations.
Yeah, and if Oh, sorry.
No,
Like
sorry,
if
go
I
ahead.
was in a classroom and we were talking about race, I would give articles to my students of both
Mm-hmm.
sides. I wouldn't just be like, here's all the awesome things about how we
Yeah.
should include race. I would also give them articles
Yeah.
saying like why we shouldn't include that and let them decide.
Mm-hmm.
Hence why the space for critical dialogue for students to critically think about what we give them and talk about it.
Yeah.
But yes, continue.
I was just gonna say, do you want to state your question one more time so our
Yes.
listeners can hear?
So our question is, we want to know how you are planning on approaching the topic of race in your classrooms, whether it's a virtual, or even if you're not going to do it virtual because you're very stressed out about it. And we totally understand that. I want to know how you would do it if we were in person. And we really want to know, like if you're planning on using literature, or if you're planning on doing writing prompts, or if you're planning on bringing in articles and stuff from like different news medias, and like letting kind of students guide their questioning and doing all of that. So we really want to know. So write into us, DM us, because then we'll be sharing some of those. I think it'd be really fun to share those.
And I want to challenge our listeners. We were talking about earlier how we were super thankful that they were kind of posting it on their stories. I'm going to push our listeners just a little bit further. And I want you to think of like one person you think would really like or enjoy our podcast, and maybe like send them a text message with our link, and I want you to screenshot that for us and send it to us, and we're going to repost it on our story. So that way, like, I don't know, you're thinking of somebody who would really benefit from this, and maybe they enjoy children's books as well. So my challenge is one person. It's not that hard. If you're listening, send it to one person.
And I like that challenge too. You should be sharing it. If you're a teacher listening to this, share it with other teachers, just because I think this would benefit. Share it with parents. I think this would benefit parents too. Especially now that we're all virtual teaching and parents are kind of freaking out because they're like, what do we do with our children? Here's a great way. Give them books. Have some discussions. Get to know your child. I mean, we get to know your child. You should too.
Yes. But I feel better now. I was definitely nervous about this episode. Now I feel a lot better, and I'm really excited. And just again, thank you to everybody who's helped us along the way. And yay, we're on like episode 4 finished.
Woo! Yes, seriously. Like, just to go off what Alejandra said, thank you so much to everyone who has shared it, who has followed us, who has given us amazing feedback. We truly appreciate it. This was a passion project of ours where we really get to talk about what makes us love teaching, what makes us love literature. And so just to see the awesome support that we've gotten from friends and family has just been amazing.
Yes.
But that will be all for this week. Anything else, Alejandra?
That's it. Go read a book.
Yes, go read a book. Go get something going. That'll be all.
Thank you. Bye.